Welcome back to the Engineered Angler. Today we're going to make another lure out of balsa. And I want to make a topwater lure. In fact, I want to make my version of a really popular lure, the Heddon Spook. Now, I want to make it a little smaller than their Super Spook, but just slightly larger than their Spook Junior. Now, truth be told, I'm not a huge fan of this lure, although you wouldn't know it by my buying habits, and there's probably another 3 or 4 of these in my tackle boxes somewhere. Somewhere along the lines, I kind of fell out of love with them. In the early days, it was really hard to get one with a knocker in it, but I never really liked the way the early models sat with an extreme tail down position in the water. It just seems like most of my bites come from when the lure is paused, and in my experience, a lure that sits a little flatter in the water tends to attract more bites and more aggressive bites. It's a popular lure, so I'm sure it works for a lot of people. Now, the tail down design was not a mistake. It was a critical part of those early lures, and if you've been watching this channel, you know why. I've done a couple of videos on designing topwater lures that walk the dog really easily. And one of the absolute key parts of that is to have the center of gravity well behind the center of drag. That creates a lure that wants to constantly turn on the glide. Now, a while back, I designed this lure, and it's a topwater lure, and I designed it specifically to be a lure that would walk the dog really easily. But you can see the shape is a little more complicated than the simple cylinder shape of the Spook. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a really simple cylinder shaped lure that will walk the dog just as well. Will sit a little more level in the water and will include a nice rattle in it too. So those early designers at Heddon, they knew what they were doing. Those early models were really tail heavy, and they did that to be sure that they can get that center of gravity well behind the center of drag, because figuring out where the center of drag is actually going to be is a really difficult task. The best most of us can really do is just weigh the odds in our favor, make sure that we create a shape that has turbulence close to the head. And the way they did it is by having a long section to about 2/3 of the way back that was flat, had very straight lines, because straight lines tend to develop turbulence. And streamlined shapes always have faired curves, or curves that have no flat spots in them, and that minimizes the drag on the body. So we're going to kind of stick to that traditional shape, and we'll create a chamber in the body for a rattle ball, maybe 2 rattle balls. And on the chin, we'll make sure that there's a little bit of a flat spot there, and we'll put our tie-on eye just below the center line of the lure, right there on the chin. I want to have the belly hook eye as close to the front as I can get it without having problems with the hook tangling with the line, and I want to have the tail hook eye below the center line as well. So we'll have our wire harness run the length of the lure and run just above that chamber. Now, the wide point of this lure will occur about 1/3 of the way back, and we're going to shoot for about 3/4 of an inch on the thickest part of this lure. So I'll be cutting out the stock for making this lure out of this 2x2 by 12 inch balsa block. I'm going to use my bandsaw to cut a 1/2 inch strip out of this block. The thing about balsa is that while it's really an exotic wood, it's grown in Central America and South America, it turns out to be pretty renewable. It's actually grown in plantations in Ecuador, and it grows super fast. In 6 years, it's ready for harvest, and they can be up to 90 feet tall and close to 14 inches in diameter. So I don't have to feel like we're destroying a rainforest to make a lure. So if you haven't seen the clamshell technique, it's very simple. We'll just temporarily glue these 2 pieces together. We'll shape the lure out of this solid block, and then we'll separate those 2 pieces again, and then insert all the hardware that we need into the middle of it. We'll glue it all back together and then paint and finish the lure. So I'll be using this Scotch tape runner stuff. It says that it's permanent, but it's not. You can also use some basic all-purpose spray adhesive. This stuff is weak enough that you can separate the parts. And I'll give it a light clamping on this vise, just to make sure I get a good adhesion so it doesn't come apart on me while I'm shaping it. So because the shape of this thing is basically going to be a cylinder, I'm not going to draw the profile of the lure on here, but I am going to draw some guidelines. I'm simply going to do this with a pen, and because the pen kind of stands off from the table a little more than 1/8 of an inch, which is where I want to put my lines, I'm going to raise the block just that little bit to get it down to 1/8 of an inch. And if you wanted the line farther up on the piece of wood, you'd want to put some kind of offset for your pen. And I usually like using just like a little notepad like this, because you can just fold back the pages and refine the distance you elevate your block of wood with how many sheets you put under it. So when I cut back these corners to those guidelines, I'm going to end up with sort of a blocky cylinder that's a little more than the 3/4 inches that I want. But with balsa, you really got to be careful not to be too exact with your cutting. You want to leave it just a little large because it's very easy to take too much off. And bringing it down to the exact size you want to can be done with sandpaper and a little bit of patience. And just sort of take my time and slowly cut this down. It's really easy to do. Obviously, this stuff is so soft. And I'll start the process of rounding off the harder corners that I'm leaving. But I'm being really conservative so that you can see that the process can be slow and pretty sure. You don't have to worry that you're not an expert carver. So at this point, I like to sketch in the circle that represents the widest point of the lure. This is 3/4 of an inch or real close to it. And I'll continue to carve off the corners, getting down kind of close to that line, but not so close that I run the risk of going too far. All right, so I've got it pretty close to being cylindrical. It's a little oblong. So I've got this piece of PVC that I cut and I glued some 220 grit sandpaper in there. And I'm just gonna take advantage of that shape and sand this down till it gets just a little closer to a perfect cylinder. All right, at this point, I'm pretty happy with how cylindrical it is. Now I'm gonna take the end that I want to be the head. So holding the seam vertical, I'm gonna select a spot just below center to bring the nose taper down. I want the point just below the center point, and I'll do the same for the tail. I'm also gonna put a pencil mark where I want the taper to start. All right, now I have some guidelines. I'm just gonna take off a bunch of material, trying to center all that on the red dot. And of course you can do that in the same technique that I got this thing around, taking material off with a knife and then sanding it back with sandpaper. But I'm gonna move things along a little faster with this belt sander. And the idea is to remove material with that off-center dot right in the middle of what you've removed. So you get an off-centered taper. I'll do the same thing with the front. All right, I've got it sanded down where it's close enough. I don't want to get too far along because in the end, I'm going to have to sand some more when I put the two halves back together. But you can see that I've centered my shaping around the dots. And you can see the quicker taper in the front as opposed to the back. So to be able to have a lot of weight in the back and not go tail down, I carried the thickness of the lure back towards the back. That'll give me lots of flotation back here, but I'll still have lots of drag in the front. And then just to add a little more drag in the front, we'll put some big frog style eyes that bug out quite a bit. So I've got it to the point where I want to go ahead and split the two halves. While balsa is great because it's really soft and easy to work, it's also really soft and easy to damage. So hopefully we'll be able to get these two halves to come apart without too much drama. I'm just going to use this blade, get it in there. It's going in pretty easily. There we go. All right, there we go. Now we can start work on the interior parts. All right, that's essentially where I want that rattle chamber. And I want to have my belly hook eye right at the point where my taper ends up here. The tie-on eye will pop out right about there, and the tail hook eye will pop out just below the center line on the back. So our harness is going to look something like this. And to be able to transfer those lines onto this half, here's a little trick I use sometimes. I use a wet erase pen and then I dampen the surface of the side that doesn't have the drawing on it with just a wet piece of paper towel. And then we just put them together, squeeze, and it transfers it over pretty closely. And I can just refine that. And we're ready to start to carve the inside out. And I'm going to use this little circular carving bit on my rotary tool. All right, so the chamber has to be deep enough so that more than half the diameter of the ball disappears in that slot. All right, now I'm going to use this pointed bit to make a groove on both sides for the internal harness. So this is what the internal arrangement will look like. I've got the 2 rattle balls in the chamber and then a single ball as a weight just in front of it. And each one of those balls weighs just at 1 gram. So here's the sound of the rattle. You see it sounds a little dull. It's not as snappy as I would really want it to be, but I've got a little trick to make the sound just a little snappier. What you do is you take some crazy glue with the lowest viscosity you can find. They sell some that's almost like water. And what I'm going to do is just saturate the wood, especially the end grain at the very end where it hits. And then I'll spritz it with some accelerator. The accelerator actually thins it really instantly and then hardens it. So it should create a hard kind of plastic surface instead of that soft fuzzy wood. And we'll do that on both sides. That definitely sounds a little snappier. I think that was worth it. I like to glue the hardware in place just in a couple key spots with some medium viscosity crazy glue. This way it doesn't run all over the place. The key is to be certain you never get any into your little rattle chamber. And try not to be too generous with this stuff. And it's just a matter of giving it a good squeeze till this thing sets up. Alright, that sounds good. Now we'll give it a thin coat of UV resin, just to give us a nice smooth surface to paint on. Ready to paint. I'm going to start off with a base of iridescent silver. This stuff. I'm going to go with a bright yellow on the belly and then a transparent yellow across the middle of the lure and then a very light green across the near top, and then we'll go with a darker green on the very top. Then we'll lay in some details. Alright, I want to add some details, just some random speckling, something that looks like maybe scales or lizard skin or frog skin. And I've been meaning to try this thing. It's a dollar store item, but there's a lot of material in here and it's sort of a fishnet kind of a thing. So I'm going to pull it apart and see what it looks like unbunched. Alright, that's a lot of material. So if you're looking for a way to get some inexpensive netting, this is actually a tube. Check that out. My intention is to sort of bunch it up and use it as sort of a random pattern generator here. I'm just going to shoot it in a fine line just below the dark stuff with the same dark green moss color. Alright, that looks pretty cool. Right, I'm going to give it a little more. Alright, I'm going to do the other side with the green and then I'm going to come back and do the same thing but with a copper gold color. Alright, I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up in this light, but it looks pretty cool. Lots of little random dots, a couple of colors, and that gradient background color looks really cool. I'm going to put a darker color around the eyes. Alright, I think that looks really cool. Alright, I really like the way the colors sort of shift from top to bottom as the light changes. Alright, I'm going to give it a couple of coats of polyacrylic. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, this is a Minwax product. It's a water-based clear wood sealer, wood finisher. And I use it as a mid-coat to seal the paint. And then I'll put the eyes on it and then we'll put the clear coat on it. But there'll be about an hour of drying time in there. I'll see you in about an hour. Alright, it's in the chamber. I'm going to let it spin for about 5 minutes, make sure it's nicely leveled, and then lights go on, and then we'll have to come back to it tomorrow because it's already dark. Alright, well, it's the next day. I actually left this thing running all night. I didn't mean to. Typically, these things only stay in here about a couple of hours. Man, this thing looks really cool. Check out those eyes. I love the way they just bulge out. And I don't know if the camera's doing it justice, but the paint job is really cool. It has this really interesting sort of fade with the blotchy paint and the multiple colors. Well, I thought today was going to be a cloudy day, but the sun's coming out, so I'm going to go ahead and hook up the boat, and I'll get some nice sunny shots of this thing, and hopefully we'll get some shots in the water. And I'll get this thing in close to some of the weedy edges, see if we can't scare up a bite. But let's put it in the test tank, see what it looks like. There you go. It just sits perfectly flat in the water. Now we just need to see how well it performs. All right, we're at the reservoir. This thing looks beautiful in the sun. I'm not gonna waste any time. Let's go ahead and put it in the water and see what it looks like. Got the lure. But it walks the dog like a champ. Look at that. All right, well, I hope I got some decent shots because I tried to do underwater shots and it's impossible to do, at least by yourself. I need a camera crew. All right, I'm gonna drift with the wind. Just a hellacious stump field here. I've already grounded up twice. Hopefully something will come up out of the logs and whack it. I just had a blow up. It was something small. And then the GoPro craps out. Well, the GoPro let me down again, man. Right after it crapped out, I had 3 consecutive hookups. One was just a blow up from a big gar, and then I got 2 decent bass on, and they jumped and everything. But I guess it's all fishing stories if it's not caught on camera. So I'm back at the dock, and I'm gonna go ahead and get some better shots of how the lure behaves on retrieve, so you can see what a nice zigzag action it really does have. And at the very end, I'll put a little slideshow so you can get a better close-up shot of the paint. It really does do a nice Z. Well, if you guys are enjoying these videos, do me a solid and leave a thumbs up, because it really does help the algorithm share this stuff with other fishermen and lure makers that really want to do this stuff. Oh, it's got bit. The other nice thing is this thing really will cast straight, and that makes it super accurate. I was able to cast underneath the Spanish moss quite a bit. We even had a little blow up here. So let me know what you think of the Heddon Spook. How much do you fish it, and for what? I have to say, I really love my version. All right, guys, as always, share this stuff with your friends, and if you have some good suggestions, put them in the comments. And don't forget, everything that I use, I put in the Amazon store, so it's easy for you guys to find. Subscribe, and I'll see you guys next Friday.